Perfect.
All right,
we're on.
Hey, Asana Academy readers. So I'm here with a good friend of mine. His name is Lamonte Goode, and he's another hand balancer like myself. And I think one of the most important things that you guys can take away is that every single person is going to give you a different perspective on maybe a handstand, maybe whatever it is you're learning. And the more perspectives that you can get, the better. And the reason I'm so excited for you guys to talk to Lamont is that, well, you know my background. I came from like a baseball athletic type background, but he started as a break dancer. So he's what I would consider a movement specialist. So he's a little bit beyond the regular yoga poses. And as you guys know, as readers, yeah, yoga poses are great, but they put you in a box, and you should be focused more on exploring your body as much as possible. So I'm happy to have Lamonte Goode here to talk about hand balancing.
Hey, Brian, how you doing?
Welcome to the Asana Academy, man.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me, Brian. I'm really honored and I'm really excited about this interview, and thanks for having me on board. I appreciate it.
Okay, so here's a couple things, that I want to talk about first, because I feel like the two of us are essentially like kids in a candy store, because it's not too often where, if you're learning handstand or you're learning any type of arm balance or any type of intricate movement that, you can actually find, like, for example, when I was learning, I got on and I was like scouring YouTube and I was scouring Google. How do I learn to do X? How do I learn to do Y? And it's all very generic stuff. And so the first question I have for you today is, for someone who's just getting started with hand balancing, let's say for someone who's just getting started wanting to learn handstand, when the thought comes into your head, what would you tell them?
First and foremost, I would say, be open to, just be a willing student, always remain a student. Don't get frustrated, but I would say do a lot of research online as yourself. Study online, find out who your favorite hand balancer or coach is, what style you like, and I would say, really just get in there and study who you like. And I would say,
what would you do if you were starting over? Let's say you lost. Let's say you lost your entire skill set. What is the most important physical asset, would you say, that someone would need to work on to start learning, say, handstand?
Wow. Well, I have a background in breakdancing and b-boying, and so there's handstands, but it's not to the level what's really more controlled. On my journey, I started off watching a lot of Cirque du Soleil videos. I was fascinated by the circus and Cirque du Soleil, and at the time, I was b-boying and breaking, and I wanted to get into learning how to do hand balancing. So I would try to mimic what I did on the video and watch. But through fate and the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it, my girlfriend at the time, she was from Europe, and so I traveled to Europe, at Prague, and she's a teacher. So I met with her and her friends, and so happened to be a Cirque du Soleil hand balance teacher while I was training at the studio. So I was actually working on my handstands and practicing, and somebody in the corner was like, "Hey, your form is off, your technique is wrong." I was like, "Who are you? What do you do?" And they had mentioned to me and told me that they were in Cirque du Soleil and they teach in hand balancing. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, this is incredible. So I happened to be like a person that they can teach me what I need to do and learn, and everything's already set up. So I would say, if you're really into what you're into, the law of attraction, whatever you want, will put you in the right direction. But just, remain humble and remain a student and study. And so go online, read books, take seminars, take workshops, reach out, I would say reach out, reach out to your famous coach or hand balance teacher, reach out, write them, ask them questions, ask them tips,
Right. And see, this is another thing too, is, another misconception about, people in the yoga world, specifically people who do handstands or people who do any type of hand balancing, it's the first thing is, okay, these are arrogant people. They're in their own little world. They're doing their own little handstands. They really don't care about what anyone else has to think. But in reality, anyone who's actually done hand balancing realizes that, you know what, in order to learn something, you kind of have to fail like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 times. And what someone doesn't understand, like the work behind the scenes, is you will fall over thousands of times before you actually get it. The thing is, people only see the finished product, and then when they see the finished product, they're like, this person is seriously in their own world.
Exactly. I failed billions of times when I was started learning. All my friends were like, "What are you doing in the corner? Why are you holding to a chair? Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you practicing?" And so they see me about maybe like a year and a half later, 2 years, and they're like, "Oh my God, this is what you've been training for." And so yes, you have to fail a billion times. Me learning all my moves in the b-ball world, like me learning how to do head spins or flares or hand hops, whatever. It took me like 10,000 hours of practice, like failing, bruising, banging yourself, scrapes, and getting fed up and being not driven, not motivated. But you have to just keep on. You have to just put in the hours, put in the dues, put in the training. It's like nobody learns how to. Babies don't learn how to walk in a day. No, it's like they crawl. It's a process. So always taking your baby steps, and that's the journey. It's not, that's the journey. It's like you getting from, point A to Z, and the learning process. And, exactly what you said. It's like people always see, the end and finished product, but nobody knows like how many hours and dues, that person has, put into, to get to that point.
It takes to actually get into it. So let me ask you, Lamont, another question. What does your training regimen look like?
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I train every day. And my default training every day is always hand balancing and yoga and stretching. So in the morning, I'll do my handstands, I warm up, I do a lot of cardio and push-ups, workouts. But my main thing after all that at night is when I train my b-boying or my breakdancing. And so that, that would like consist of power moves and concepts and flows and different ideas. And in between that, I usually practice my hand balancing and my stretching and my yoga in between all of that. So everything's kind of like integrated now. As before, I would only just practice one thing, like just only do like handstands, just to get it in my system and learning. But then now it's like once you actually get to a certain point, you can actually have the control and everything you need, and now you kind of just like integrate it into your regular practice.
To get into it, right? And so what got you into yoga initially? I'm really curious because a lot of people who get into yoga don't necessarily have a movement-based background per se. It's like they come into it because it's something new. They come from athletics, or they come from an injury, or they've done nothing at all. So like in my experience, a lot of time, it takes you have to have a pretty open mind, I think, to progress in that direction, considering when I meet other dancers or I meet any martial artists, when you tell them yoga, sometimes they kind of already laugh at it because they think they know the way. What made you consider yoga?
Great question, Brian. Okay, so I've been breaking since '96, and in breaking, it's very extreme in the body. And so at the time, I had zero flexibility, zero flexibility. Okay. But years of doing certain moves and breaking, I tend to get hurt. I was getting hurt a lot, and so, for instance, if I'm doing flares or doing head spins, my range of motion was limited because I wasn't flexible at all. And so I got really tired of always getting hurt and pulling my groin or pulling my shoulder. And one day I came across a magazine. It was like a yoga for some yoga magazine, and on the cover was a guy named Richard Freeman. Amazing yoga.
Yeah.
That guy. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's amazing. Like, I want to learn how to do that. Like, this is what I want to learn how to do. And, seeing that he was like a older guy, I was like, well, if he can do it, I can if I get into my practice. And so I picked up a DVD online. I actually bought one online and purchased it, watched this DVD, took some regular yoga classes out here in LA, and I don't know.
Right.
There,
and so it's interesting because, all it takes one little spark sometimes. Like, I mean, for example, with me, I got forced to do yoga classes when I was like 14 years old or like 15 years old. Actually, my mom used to try and force me to do yoga classes. I didn't want any part of it. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to stretch. But you get to a certain point where just the light bulb turns on.
Yeah.
And the more and more types of movement that you integrate into your practice, the better off really you're going to be. And so if you are coming from a dance background, or you are coming from a b-boy background or a martial art type background, doing that can only help, right?
Oh my God, so many doors open, bro. I mean, for me, in the beginning, I was doing a lot of, back then, I was doing air babies and like static holds and poses and freezes, but it wasn't as developed and advanced as it was today. So back then I had zero flexibility. So when I started doing yoga and stretching, I felt and saw the benefits in my body of doing yoga. I felt like parts of my body was opening up, and I felt like some moves were actually easier to get in and out of because of my flexibility practice. It was amazing. And so from there, I just saw like it was like a holy grail, like something just, like you mentioned, a spark just happened. I was like, well, you know what? If I can do this with breaking and yoga, how many more poses can I make up? I mean, what's possible if I really just put my mind and focus into it? I mean, what is really possible? So you know what? From then I started just practicing and learning how to like integrate flexibility and some balances, together, and then everything kind of just rolled into. I mean, everything just kind of just came into place. It was amazing.
Came together, yeah. Because there's a couple points I want to ask you about in there. Particularly, I mean, this is going to be kind of a selfish question for me, but so in my journey with one-handed balancing, so I've got my air baby down. I'd say pretty solid. I can hold it for 20, 30 seconds. Okay. But it took a while to get to that point.
Well, it took me a while.
Yeah, and now, so I'm kind of like in that phase where I'm learning one-handed handstand, and that I'll hold it for between like 5 and 10 seconds, and there's rotation I have to contend with, and there's little things where I feel like the side of my body is breaking down. What advice would you give me in nailing one-handed handstand and becoming consistent with it?
I would say first and foremost, what helped me a lot was mastering your handstand. I would say just endurance training. I got a lot of pointers from the circus, a lot of coaches studying with hand balance teachers in the past, and what they taught me was really focusing on the endurance and the breathing and the alignment. First and foremost, the default, I would say mastering your handstand to the point where you can hold a static handstand for at least 30 seconds to a minute. No problem.
Right.
That's the important thing. Having the foundation strength in your arms to stay there longer. Because I know most people tend to want, they want the one-arm handstand, but don't really have a strong handstand base. So I would say first and foremost, having a strong handstand foundation base is really important first. And then, the alignment, the breathing, all that comes into play. It's a science. I mean, it's a science. I mean, trust me. I've been doing hand balancing for a while and falling and falling and falling. But I would say another note to add would be flexibility helps a lot when it comes to hand balancing as well.
Totally. And like in my experience, I mean, I feel like it's like this. Balancing on, let's say, if balancing on two hands, I don't know. If like balancing on two hands was like balancing on like a rope, for example. Balancing on one hand is like trying to balance on like a freaking piece of dental floss, it's a really, really, really fine balance. And I think for some people, I mean, like for us hand balancers who like doing this kind of stuff, we thrive off of it. It's like, all right, I'm going to do it over and over and over and over and over.
Over.
And the miracle of it is like, man, if you start to do it enough and you start to pick up cues and subtleties that go on in your body, it starts to happen. But then you have the other camp of people, which are like, oh my God, this is miserable. It's way too hard. I can't do it. This isn't for me. What's wrong with myself? And another point that I want to bring up is that anyone who's ever learned hand balancing, even the process of learning was fun. We had fun learning. And
yes.
I caution everyone with this. If you don't have fun learning, you might as well just quit, because you're always going to be learning something and you're never going to be having fun.
You're always a student, man. You're always a student. And, you know, with like hand balancing, it's amazing, because when you're learning it, over time, you start to learn how to like autocorrect certain things, you know what works and what doesn't. So I know that the weight distribution helps a lot, you know, but that comes with years of just like understanding your body and the placement and the alignment and everything. It's a straight up science. It's like a straight science. It's all physics, you know. I would say for me, I'm learning how to do hand balancing, you know, one arm, and I'm trying to go for the hardest ones first, whether it's the legs together or the figa. No, you can't learn that way. Like, you have to learn with the very, you know, the very basic.
Right. For the listeners, tell them what a figa is. That's with your legs out to the side and like the hands, like in your hand right between your legs. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it's more like a one-handed pike. Yes. Your legs are folded and your hand is coming out through your folded legs. And for me, that was like the most amazing hand balance posture I wanted to learn. And I wanted to learn that first, you know. In b-boying, I could hop into it and hold it for like a second, but when I saw the hand bouncers actually holding it for like a minute or two, I was just blown away and just fascinated by it. So that's what I wanted to learn first. But, you know, I actually like learned the hard way by falling and bruising my elbow and falling and scraping. But, you know, it's like learning your basics first. Like, master your basics, then you break the rules. It's very important.
Right. And this is the thing. This is the thing for the people who think, you know, you can show up to one yoga class and do a handstand. Tell them how many times you've fallen over.
Wow. I can at least say I fell over, I don't know, 500 times.
Yeah. Okay. We're talking like serious falls and
serious.
And how many attempts, right? It's like thousands and thousands and
thousands of hours. It's like how many times did it take you to learn how to walk when you was a baby? It just took well, I mean, maybe not as much, but I mean, for me, learning certain moves, like, it took me about a year to get my flares. It took me a year. And I would say like it took me about a year and a half to get my head spins. Hand balancing, it took me about a good 2 years of like my own practice, and then finally like getting the right tools, and then about like 3 years of practice got me to where like I wanted to be. And now 5 years later, it's like whatever, you know. But, you know, it's just time. It's just paying your dues and really putting in the hours.
What are the tools? What are the tools that really helped you take your hand balancing to the next level?
Well, I would say for me, a lot of like conditioning and working out, and I would say, you know, a lot of conditioning, but for me, my major thing was learning how to breathe correctly so I can stay up there longer. The breathing is really important. Like, when you're in your posture or whatever you're doing, it's very important to breathe through your movements. If not, it's gonna be really hard and you're cheating yourself. So for me, it was really about the breathing and the conditioning and the practicing. And then later on came the flexibility, like that I learned to help. That the flexibility helps you with your form, and once your form is on point, then everything's a little bit easier. So yeah, I would say just all those elements help a lot, you know.
Right. And with flexibility, what type of flexibility are we talking here? Like, for you can do this front splits, side splits, and like, well, now that you're a yoga teacher, like leg behind the head. So Arthur loves doing leg behind the head stuff, right?
Yeah.
Do you do that kind of stuff too with your leg behind your head?
I could do leg behind the head as a pose, but I'm still training how to do the leg behind the head, you know, for instance, like air baby or leg behind the head, whatever, you know. But I can put my leg behind my head and do a pose, but not as advanced as Arthur. But
I should do this for this segment. I think it would be funny.
Yeah, there you go, man. You got it, man. At the time, you know, it's crazy. At the time, I was limited in flexibility, so my range of motion was kind of limited. So I worked around what I had. So I would try to work on and create poses that were somewhat flexible on top of my balance skills. So yeah, so I would make up like weird shapes and dimensions with my body because my limited flexibility wouldn't allow me, you know, to do like, I don't know. What I really want to do, you know, I couldn't like do at the time. So I just made up certain poses that kind of like
help you get there. Right. So shifting gears a little bit, I want your perspective on this. How does the yoga community, especially down in Santa Monica, how do they welcome someone who comes from a dance background, who comes from a hand balancing background, and then decides they want to be a yoga teacher? What do they think of that?
You mean like for me?
Yeah. What's your general reception been like? You know,
wow.
Transitioning from, you know, like the b-boy world, which is, you know, it's a lot more like on the streets. It's a lot more just like grassroots into like like a $40 billion industry, which is yoga.
It's interesting because you know, my background in b-boying is very competition based. It's all based on ego. And I feel like I wanted to break from that and wanted to go into another scene. And I feel like yoga's helped me so much with my life as far as my mindset, my spirituality, and my body changing. I felt like that's where I kind of wanted to focus my energy on. And so, I don't know, when I got into the yoga world, I was kind of disappointed with a lot of the feedback of what I do. A lot of people were like, "Oh, well, you know, that's not yoga, and you're lucky, you know, because you're breaking." And a lot of people didn't really support what I did, you know. Not a lot of support at all, actually. What really kind of boosted me was when I met Bryce and Brianni. They were at Venice Beach at the time. During that time, I was doing a lot of like street performing, like shows on the beach. And I ran into them. I was doing some pose and hand balancing and like air babies at the beach, and they're just like blown away. They're like, "Oh my god! Like, look at what you're doing! Like, it's incredible!" You know. And so they wanted me to meet up with their yoga teachers at the time, and they wanted me to like you know, get in the scene and, you know, meet some yoga teachers and stuff like that. It didn't really work out.
That's how it starts to mix. Like I remember back when I was living down there, Venice Beach. It's an interesting place because it's like, honestly, it's a point where a bunch of different types of disciplines can meet and mix.
Yes.
And I credit that I actually credit specifically that area, that stretch of the beach there down in Venice, for why dancing, martial arts, and yoga have all merged, because that's where everyone meets down there, you know?
Integration, man, integration. Like, you know, the best way is, you know, Venice Beach, you know, like you have the weirdos, you have the artists, the yogis, the dancers, everybody comes together, man. It's beautiful.
Right.
But,
go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say it was Dice and Brianni that gave me the idea. Okay, Lamont, you can be relevant in, you know, in the yoga world, like really just, you know, put your stuff out there. And so I did that. You know, I tried to, you know, teach workshops, stuff like that, but got not a lot of support. And what really bothered me was the fact that they looked at me as like a competition instead of like, hey, you know, this guy's talented, you know, we can learn from him, or we can kind of like merge together or like integrate or whatever. And for me, it was like, they looked at me as a threat, and that really kind of like bothered me. So it kind of really put a damp on my
Yeah. What kind of workshops did they want you to teach?
Well, I basically was creating my own workshops. So it was more inversion based. And so what I taught was just all the very basics of what I've learned until now. So it'll go from anywhere from um, a Bakasana to the Airbnb to the Mayurasana to some variations. And then it will lead up into like control with the hips and the head standing, handstands, hand balancing. So everything kind of like worked together. So I made a little sequencing format. And yeah, at a time, most of all the teachers, like the big names, wanted to take my class, and for them it was really hard. It was just like way too advanced for them.
Right, and then they get okay. So you're actually teaching down there right now, yeah?
No, I'm not teaching in LA. I do workshops all over the road. So people fly me out, and I do workshops, whether it's in Spain or in the UK or
awesome
China. So yeah, I've taught a lot overseas and got more.
Europeans are a lot more open.
Yes, more open, way more open. And I feel like in LA, Venice and Santa Monica, I feel like
they're regimented. They're stuck in their ways. Like Lamont. I know this too. 40 years from now, you'll have the respect to teach someone how to do crow. 40 years from now, after you've got the beard and after you've got the mala beads, then you'll be able to teach someone crow.
Yeah, and to me, that's. I mean, it's very commercialized now, but at the same time, I feel like, yeah, if you're not an older person with the gray hair and beads, then you're not, the real. But it's like, not everybody, everybody isn't from India, so everybody has their specialty and their skills, and you don't have to be from India, to be spiritual. I don't know. It's like.
So how about this? Let's transition. Talk a little bit about cyber yoga. What gave you what made you decide that cyber yoga was going to be the name for what you do?
Okay. So at the time, I told you I was trying to get into all the, trying to teach and, really wanting to be involved in the yoga scene, but people wasn't very welcoming. And so what I wanted to do was come up with a name or a brand for what I do, because it's not just yoga, it's not just breaking, it's not just acrobatics. I wanted to come up with a name and a brand for what I do, kind of like a Pepsi, a Coke, a Sprite, but I wanted to come up with one name that symbolizes everything I do. And me, normally, I'm into science fiction and technology and machines and into robotics and stuff like that. And so I don't know, I'm very fascinated with that world, the Matrix and the Terminator and everything, like machine-based man and machine.
Yeah, right.
So the concept was, I came up. So cyber, it's actually an acronym. It's calisthenics, yoga, breaking, equilibre, revolution. Yoga's the base. So it's cyber yoga. We're physical.
No, sorry to interrupt you for a second. I had no idea that there was actually an acronym behind that.
Yeah, bro.
That makes it even cooler, actually.
Yeah. It's an acronym. I feel that we are biological, physical machines. So it's man, machine, and yoga coming together. And so I had this vision of futuristic modern yoga, via, I don't know, it's just basically inspired by my life and what I've been through. And most of all my influences, has been from watching machines and science fiction movies. And I don't know, I'm just fascinated, with anything being progressive and futuristic. So that's my mindset. And so I wanted to take that approach and put it to my practice, and then finally yoga, because yoga was my zen and my
calling, almost to the point where it's all right, yoga is a place where I can go in and kind of go into my own head a little bit here.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, I felt like there was not a lot of integrity in the yoga studios and in the scene, you know, where I was. So I took my foundation and I wanted to create, you know, my own movement, my own thing. Like, you know, I wanted to, you know, basically, you know, create my own thing. And so I'm very, you know, naturally I'm very, naturally I'm spiritual, naturally. But then yoga kind of just gave me a boost. And I don't know,
yoga was kind of like that little boost where you were just like, God.
Yeah, exactly, man. So I don't know, like I feel very connected naturally, you know, but like yoga really kind of just helped me. And I don't know, I just felt really depressed and kind of saddened about the yoga scene out here in LA, because I don't know, I feel it's very trendy and very Hollywood, and it's not like the essence and the integrity is not there. Like I feel like nobody's really warm, like nobody really welcomes you, like really, you know, and yoga should be about that. And
right, and there's a lot of people that are out for themselves, you know, and having
a lot of people are out for themselves, you know, and I see it. I'm like, well, why am I a threat for you when you should be like my brother, you know, like you should, hey, you know what, like let's work together, you know, how can we learn from you, know, how can we merge, you know, how can we like integrate, you know, like how can we learn from each other? It was like, no, you do amazing handstands, you're my competition, I don't want you around, I'm not going to support what you're doing. And that's
what God.
Yeah, and so you know what, I was like, you know what, I want to create my own thing, my own brand of yoga, and I want to leave a legacy. And so I wanted to create something powerful and something really genuine. And so I came up with Wasabi Yoga. You know, it took me like a year to come up with the name. I was like, whoa, you know, what names, you know, can I use? Neo yoga or abstract yoga, and da 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 da. And I was like, yo, I don't know, like something was like, you know what?
Stuck with cyber.
Whoa, bro, I was watching, what is it? The Matrix, and then I watched like the Terminator movie, and I was like in love with like the Terminator movies, and I was like, cybernetic yoga, because you know it's like the way I move is almost kind of like robotic and cybernetic. So I'm very much into form, the lines, and the symmetry, and the control. So it's almost like a machine. So I don't know. I was thinking like cybernetic, and I was like cyber yoga. And then that's when I came.
And so that's the thing. I mean, we kind of met by fate. You tagged me on something you did on Instagram. So let's talk about that a little bit, because you know I have my blog and I like to write, but one thing that I personally don't particularly enjoy is updating my Instagram every day. You know, so
it's a job.
It's a job, right? So tell the listeners, because I'm sure they're interested. What do you do to build up a following that large? Like,
okay,
what did you do to get started?
Okay. One of my friends told me to get on Instagram. I was like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. You know, I mean, this was what, like 2-3 years ago, and at the time, you know, it was great, and I was like, you know, putting up a couple photos, but then something told me, hey, Lamont, put up your signature pose, and this pose it's called the Super Soldier pose. It went viral in the yoga world. Viral, trust me, it went viral. Anyway, you know what? Let me put up a couple poses that I do, you know, in my practice and you know, in my breaking sets that I do. I said, you know what? Let me just put it out there and see what happens. I put up one pose. It was like literally like 1 day later, everybody was like, oh my God, what is this pose? Like, how do you do this? What is this? And I was like, yo, well, you know, this is what I do. You know, I'm a dancer, a b-boy, and yogi, you know, and I like to create different lines and symmetry with my body. You know, sometimes, I don't know, I get, I mean, not bored, but I want to see what's possible. I mean, like what other postures can be made or created or innovated. So anyway, I like put the pose up, and it went viral in 1 day. I mean, I had like yoga teachers from all over writing me, oh my God, who are you? What is this? But then, bro, it literally backfired on me. a couple, teachers will like take the pose and rename it, and bro, like they had a bigger following, than me back at the time. So at the time they had what, like 50 plus like followers back then. So that was huge. So they would take the pose, redo it, rename it, and not even mention my name. And I was like, okay, it's like I don't mind sharing, but if you make up something, I feel, hey, it's only fair if you kind of get credit for your work or whatever, or
Right.
at least like mention my name, whatever. And so I don't know, like at the time I was like kind of like mad about it and depressed, and I would like write people back and say, hey, you know what? I don't mind, I don't mind you doing my poses, but at least like mention my name. And they're like, well, this is yoga, and we, nobody gives credit and nobody makes up like new poses. And I was just kind of like, okay, but you're using my pose and you're calling it something else, and I'm the bad guy if I'm just like backing up my stuff. And they're just kind of like, I don't know. So I was a bad guy for a long time because I was like defending my work.
Right. And it's kind of a natural thing, to do all of a sudden. And so what were you doing? You were putting up poses, and what hashtags were you using? Like yoga hashtags?
Well, at the time I didn't have the name Cyber Yoga or the concept in my head, because like, hey, you know what? I was like, I'm a dancer yogi. This is what I do. I just put it out there, and I didn't really like hashtag it, but I would hashtag super soldier or whatever, and then people would. And so what sparked Cyber Yoga was me just being, me just really being like mad at the yoga scene, or I mean, not mad, but kind of like, what is it? Frustrated.
Right.
So I wanted to create something, a name for what I do. Like, oh, that's a Cyber Yoga style. Oh, that's Cyber Yoga. Because I felt, it's really important, to actually have a brand, a name and a brand for what you do, whatever. I mean, for instance, it's like, Dylan Warner Yoga or Yoga Beyond or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I wanted to create a niche and a name for what I do specifically. And so this is why I came up with Cyber Yoga as well, because I wanted to create my own thing and create my own legacy and create my own following. And yeah, so that's how it came to be. And
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, and so since then, I wanted to just keep on creating more poses, more, like more ways, I mean, how many different ways can I do the super soldier pose, and so that's my concept, it's like in b-boying, you take one move and over time, it just naturally evolves. So you can do an air baby like 10 different ways. You could do air baby and lotus, you could do air baby and, leg behind your head. You could do air baby up to one-handed handstand. I mean, there's so many different ways. So my thing is, it's always like building on top of your like your foundations. So just thinking always next level, how can I make it better? How can I come in and out of this pose? So that's
what kind of variations can I do to make it look even cooler? It's so awesome. I mean, I saw your stuff and I'm like, man, I'm instantly a fan. Like this stuff is pretty amazing because
you too, brother. You too, man.
I mean, it's just like it's just like the more and more you work on this stuff, the more and more, at least from my opinion, the more and more respect you have. Like I look at that and I go, God, mad respect for this guy because he worked hours to do this. I know how hard it is. And
so hard.
When you see people who are like, the first thing they can do is like trash talk it and discount it and this and that. You're just like, man, they haven't even actually done it themselves.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this is the thing, like just to wrap up, like this interview portion, where can people find you? Like give them your Instagram, give them your website, just tell them where they can go find more information about you. And I'm going to have all the links up on the Asana Academy for people to check out too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. You can reach me on my social media via Instagram. It's _cyberyoga_. That's my Instagram. My Facebook page is facebook.com/cyberyoga1. My website cyberyoga.la. Apparently, somebody had the name Cyber Yoga years ago, and I don't know how or why, but I always went in like cyberyoga.com or cyber whatever it is, but I don't know. I feel like somebody went back in time and was like, let's take the name so we can't use it or something. I don't know, really like that. But yeah, on my social media, Instagram, it's underscore cyberyoga underscore. Facebook, facebook.com/cyberyoga1. My website, cyberyoga.la.
Fantastic. Well, Lamont, thank you. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to have you back on here again, and we'll have to do the roundtable discussion. I think the hand balancing roundtable discussion, you know, we can make this almost like a monthly thing. So I can talk to, you know, what I think would be super awesome is just before I end this interview, what are some parting words you have for the Asana Academy listeners?
I would say, this is my favorite. I would say, remain a student, always be humble, remain a student. And it's not always about the destination, it's the journey. It's your journey, it's your growth. So I'll say
100% it. Did you guys hear that? It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And that is honestly the most important thing, because if you enjoy the journey, you're going to enjoy the process and you'll get there eventually.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you know, like all the handstands and stuff is cool, but it's your journey, it's your personal journey. So don't let nobody stop you or like deter you from your own practice. You know, if you don't like something, like the old school say, you know, if you don't like something, don't say it at all. But you know, always, you know, just I say, you know,
follow your journey and you'll get there.
Follow your passion.
Man, thank you so much. I look forward to hand balancing down with you in LA sometime when I get down there, or maybe you come up here for Palo Alto at some point.
I'm excited, brother. Anytime, man. Anytime, Brian. Thank you again.
All right, Lamont. Talk to you soon, man.
Take care, brother.